Okay, this is one more short video about specifically just about the research paper itself. Most of these things I'm going to say, if not all of them, are already in the announcements and the directions, but I just want to present it in another way in case it's helpful to anyone. Okay, so remember, there's basically three parts to this paper. Okay, first off, you are picking one of these terms that we've gone over with the Fin de Siecle, either pessimism, ennui, decadence, or degeneration. So you're picking one, you're only focusing on one of those. Okay. It's certainly possible that you might end up referencing briefly another one or more of them, but you're focused just on one, really. Okay. So the first part of the paper is meant to be defining this term and also placing it in the context of the Fin de Siecle. Okay. Now your research itself, your source that you find for this is supposed to be a scholarly source, okay? And this scholarly source might not place your term in the context of the Fin de Siecle, okay? And that's okay, okay? But you cannot only be talking about this term in another context, okay? So if your source is talking about it in the context of, say, like ancient Rome, okay, which could certainly be considered decadent, for example, okay, you're not to be giving details about decadence in ancient Rome, okay? That would be going off topic here, okay? You could have a source about decadence in ancient Rome, but if you're using that, you're only using it to give a definition of decadence that is not focused in ancient Rome. Okay, so you can do that. Okay, of course, you might want to be finding specifically a source that does place your topic in the context of the Fin de Siecle. That would be probably easier and work better. Okay, but that might take some more time to specifically find a source like that, of course, actually, right? But it's okay again to have a source that doesn't put it right in the context of the Fin de Siecle. It might be in another context, but you're just not going to discuss that other context, actually. Okay, so this might actually take two sources potentially for you. Okay, you could also be thinking back to just the discussion that I've given of the Fin de Siecle, of course, too. But you might need another source that's just about the Fin de Siecle that you can connect to another source that's about your topic if it's in a different context from the Fin de Siecle. Okay, so that's just a possibility for us to consider here, okay, if necessary. Okay, but you got to make sure that you are thoroughly defining this term and putting it in the context of the Fin de Siecle. So talking about how people in that time period in the 1890s get this sense of feeling, okay, via the pessimism, ennui, decadence, or degeneration, okay, and how it's shown in the Fin de Siecle. Okay, then the second part of your paper is probably going to be the lengthiest part because this is where you talk about how the Picture of Dorian Gray, the novel itself, demonstrates this topic. Okay, and we've got given lots of references in class about this. In my video lectures, I've tried to make references to these topics too in the chapters that I've been talking about. Okay, but you need to make sure that you are specific about this. Okay, like if you're focusing on decadence, for example, don't just say there's many characters in the book that are decadent. Okay, because then you're going to be too broad in that kind of sense, right? You need to talk about how specific characters demonstrate decadent behavior, right? And make sure that you give enough details about specific characters that it's thoroughly persuasive and convincing, actually, and shows a deep understanding of how that character is decadent. So we don't want to just talk about like a group of characters really being decadent. That's going to be probably be shallow analysis. Like you definitely can focus on Dorian, and to a lesser extent, Lord Henry and the Duchess, for example. Okay. But just make sure that you are giving enough evidence here. Go back to the rubric, make sure that you're giving enough quotes for this. It's certainly okay to give more than the required number of quotes too. Okay, that's fine. Just make sure that you are being thoroughly persuasive about this. And this, again, probably is the longest part of your paper. Okay, at least that's what I would expect to see. Okay. And then the last part of your paper is taking the topic and putting it in the context of the present day. Okay, so that's left very open-ended to you. Okay, um, so if you want to talk about, for example, pessimism, okay, like you can even focus like right now with people at the time of me recording this in April of 2020 that like many people have like probably a pessimistic attitude about life because of the coronavirus outbreak, for example, right? That's just one suggestion. You don't have to go in that direction with it. I'm just trying to give like one way in which we might think about this. Okay. But again, you can't just talk about this in a very generalized kind of way. Like you can't just make like claims like that just to say like, oh, people are more pessimistic now because of the coronavirus outbreak. Like, where's the evidence for that actually, right? We would want like specific evidence for that. Um, and this could be a popular source actually, but we want to be careful with that kind of evidence. Like if a popular source only has like some anecdotes about people feeling more pessimistic because of this, like that's not really that convincing in itself. Maybe if there was like a survey done about how people's attitudes are in this time, like maybe that would be probably more appropriate kind of evidence actually, right? Okay. Or just to look at one of the other topics like degeneration, maybe like again, how do we see degeneration happening in the present day? Like what signs are there in society that society is kind of like moving backwards in a way, okay, or that people are becoming more evil or more decadent too, for that matter, actually. Okay, again, we want to make sure you're not too broad with this kind of topic. Actually, you want to make sure you're giving like very specific kind of evidence that proves that this topic is relevant in the present day and that we actually do see it coming. Okay, so remember, also, just to finish up, that we should have an introduction and a conclusion to your paper as well. Okay, and the sections, the 3 parts that I've talked about, don't necessarily just need to be 1 paragraph each. It's okay to split that up into more than 1 paragraph if necessary, just whatever you think is best, actually. Okay, and if you guys have any questions about how to organize your paper, if the kind of evidence that you're giving, if it's valid and good enough, if the analysis that you're giving is good enough, to feel free to email me with any questions that you guys have about this, actually. Okay, hope that was helpful. Again, if you have any questions or want any feedback on your ideas, feel free to let me know, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, thanks.